Hello and welcome to AP Computer Science with the Arupe Virtual Learning Institute. My name is John Maxwell, and today in this video we're going over the comparable interface. Not really the comparable interface, because it's not part of the AP curriculum anymore. It's so last year, but the part of the comparable interface that applies to the class, which is the compareTo method right here. So you see up here, person implements comparable interface. Takes and one requirement for implementing an interface is that you put the compareTo method in all classes that implement the comparable interface. So let's take a look at the API for a second. Here's the API, okay, up at oracle.com, and it clearly describes that it's an interface and it has a number of implementing classes, okay. So we have a few that are sort of integral, right? Here we have integer right here. We have big decimal, boolean, okay. And the one that the student asked about at the end of year summary in December, the string class, okay. So we also have some odd, interesting classes, at least to me. We have the Thai Buddhist era, and we also have the Japanese date, and a number of interesting classes like that. So wherever you want to put things in order, which is what the compareTo method allows you to do, is where you want to implement the comparable interface. But actual implementation is beyond the scope of this class. So let's scroll down to what they say, the comparable interface and the Java Docs API about it. And it has one simple method that returns an int and takes object of the same type in. And what it will return in that int is either a negative integer, 0, or a positive integer, as this object is less than, equal to, or greater than. So negative if the object comes before the other one, 0 if they're the same, and positive if it comes after. And how that determination of what comes before and what comes after is determined by each individual class. So a big integer, for example, might implement it based on the value stored in the big integer. A string would probably implement it based on alphabetic order. And to be honest with you, just guessing, Thai Buddhist era, okay, probably puts one era that comes before another, and remarks that, hey, we can put these eras in order based on what it returns, a negative number, 0, or a positive number. So let's go back to our class and see how we implement it. Well, it said we have to put the compareTo inner method in, and I've written one here. And compareTo is going to evaluate based on values in the instance variables up here. We'll talk about the static variable in a second, but person is represented by name and age and employee ID. So in this case, it perhaps is a better name to call this the worker class, but it's simply a person. And if they're the same, they have the same age and the same name, and you return 0. So that says equality. And you may ask yourself, there's a dot equals method. Perhaps that might work to return equality, and in most cases, yes. Okay, so compareTo is somewhat duplicative of the equals method in that it can be also used to compare equality. Testable thing. I've seen multiple choice questions with that concept in mind. We also have, if name, in a comparison of strings, okay, is -1 and the age is not equal to that, then my name comes before your name and I'm going to return -1 because we're not the same age, and that just kind of verifies we're not the same person. Again, how you construct this comparison depends on your class design. We also have a stray S here, which I'll remove, but like in the case where it doesn't come before, it comes after and returns a positive number. 0, -1, and 1. And so what I've done is fulfill the requirements of the class. Now, look, X dot compare to Y. Y becomes other. They're aliases of each other. The reference to the object in memory gets passed. And you can use other.getAge or other .name. You can either use the accessor method or you can directly access the instance variables of another object of the same type. It depends, okay, and it does the work. And what happens is, because Tom comes after Pat, X is Tom and Y is Pat, Y becomes other, the comparison gets done. It returns a -1. Pardon me. So that's the compareTo method, and hopefully the person who asked for a further explanation is watching. If not, it might have clarified something for everyone. Now we have a static ID up here, and we're going to move on to a discussion of static. We have a static ID variable. It's an integer type, and when you use the word static, that variable is going to apply to every instance of the class. So every instance of the class shares that value, or that variable, or the variable, the value in the variable. Okay, so we'll get like a little technical there, but every instance has access to that variable. Name, age, and employee ID are class instance variables. Only each instance has its own set of those variables. So what we do here when we create a person is increase the ID and assign it into employee ID, because we all have access to that, right? We can assign ID numbers that way. I'm wondering if the student IDs at your school are not assigned that way. Each time a student is entered into the system, a static variable gets increased. And there might be an example of how it's used. Okay, so if you have class variable, it's probably well and wise to make a static method that reports on it. And so this static method can be called by an instance of the class or the class name. In the case of math.abs or math.power, those, we learned those in first semester. They were called by the class name. This is called by the class name as well, okay? And it returns the static ID variable 2, which we created 2 instances of it, so that contains 2. And so when we increase it with the next creation of an object, it would become 3. And everyone has access to that static variable, static class variable, as opposed to a class instance variable. So hopefully this explains 2 things. One, the compareTo method, and the other, static variables and static methods. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you next week.